te whakarongo mai koe ki te reo irirangi o Aotearoa. This is Checkpoint on RNZ National. I'm Lisa Owen. Haere aki nei, the Northland COVID border bungle complete with allegations of prostitution and gang links. Turns out none of it's true. Now there's a queue for apologies, so is anyone sorry? Lumping 20 kilo crates of meat in minus 18 degrees with frostbite. Another day on the job, according to a former Gloriavale resident. The second tunnel for Auckland CRL link is almost done. The size of the financial hole, well, that's a little less certain. Plans for a village to house fly-in, fly-out construction workers in Dunedin, and the cosy water tanks turned high mountain huts. Don't forget, you can catch us live, Sky Channel 83, Freeview Channel 50.
RNZ News at 5. Ahi Marie, good afternoon. I'm Evie Ashton. Mongrel Mob Life member Harry Tam wants an apology after being wrongly implicated in the Northland COVID-19 lockdown. A police investigation has found the COVID-infected women who triggered the October lockdown weren't sex workers or connected to gangs, as implied at the time. It's also cleared Harry Tam of any involvement after former Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters claimed Mr Tam helped the women travel to Northland. Mr Tam says officials could have cleared his name earlier.
I feel like out of all this, no one got named, I got named. If anyone that should be getting an apology, it should be me. Because those officials could have cleared that up right away when they knew who those women were and they had no gang affiliations. They should have spoken up, but they didn't.
Winston Peters has since issued a correction and apologised for making the allegations about Mr Tam. Health NZ says the country is clearly moving into a new stage of the COVID pandemic, but is not out of the woods yet. Both case numbers and hospitalisations are at their lowest point since February. Health correspondent Rowan Quinn has been at the latest COVID briefing.
A graph at the briefing shows the outbreak looking like a rocky mountain, with the case numbers near the bottom again. Te Whatu Ora's Deputy Director General of Health, Andrew Auld, says modelling suggests there'll be a long tail of declining cases into the end of the year. It currently shows a big summer outbreak is unlikely. But he says that could all change if a new variant emerges, as happened in the northern summer, so the country must stay vigilant. An announcement on COVID restriction changes is expected on Monday.
The National Party says high failure rates in a trial run of new NCEA literacy and numeracy tests are concerning. Schools are reporting high failure rates in writing and maths tests trialled earlier this year, and they're worried what will happen when they become compulsory in 2024. National's education spokesperson, Erica Stanford, says the co-requisites are a good idea, but there needs to be a plan on how to turn things around.
The problem that we've got is there's no investment, we're not changing anything to get these children to pass. And the answers lie, right back, in my view, at early childhood education around oral language skills, and then what we're doing in primary school around numeracy and literacy. We have lost our way over the last couple of decades when the system is letting teachers and principals in schools down.
Erica Stanford says schools need more support to get students across the line. Northlanders are worried slow progress on fixing broken roads will have serious effects on local communities. State Highway 1 at the Mangamuka Gorge just south of Kaitaia is closed indefinitely because 15 areas of the road have been washed out in storms. Karoria is a Mangamuka local and says parts of the alternative routes are also in bad shape.
I really worry about the impact on whānau with the road closures, and I think that we need to provide more of a wraparound kind of approach, because it's not just a road, it's actually access to education, work, and all of the things that we need to exist.
You can hear more on this report in Checkpoint shortly. A man and his dog have escaped from a fire that destroyed a house in the Wellington suburb of Tawa this afternoon. A firefighter at the scene says the occupant was alerted to the blaze by a smoke alarm, but delayed leaving the house until he had found his dog. He has minor smoke inhalation and the dog is uninjured. Fire and Emergency says the house was engulfed in flames by the time firefighters arrived. In sport, Amelia-Ann Ignacio says clawing her way back into the Silver Ferns after having her second child has been a tough journey. Ignacio has been named in the Silver Ferns team to compete against Jamaica in a 3-test series. The shooter has also won the captaincy back in a team leadership vote. Gina Crampton has been demoted to vice-captain. Ignacio became a mum for the second time late last year, but has now proved her fitness.
It feels like it's been a really long journey to come back into the squad. It's been a lot of hard work. Obviously, so much hard work goes into being in the squad normally, but after having my second baby, it's taken a lot longer and a lot more hard work.
The series against Jamaica starts on September 17th. In the US Tennis Open men's quarterfinals, Australian Nick Kyrgios and Russian Karen Khachanov are locked in a 5-set battle in New York. Khachanov won the first and third sets and Kyrgios claimed the 4th set tiebreak. The winner will meet in form 5th seed Casper Ruud in the semi-finals on Saturday. The football Ferns have won back-to-back games for the first time this year with a 2-1 victory over the Philippines in California. New Zealand went behind in the 45th minute, but goals from Michaela Moore and captain Ali Riley got the win that backs up the victory over Mexico at the weekend. And New Zealand cyclist Corbin Strong has lost the lead in the Tour of Britain after finishing 13th on stage 3 in Sunderland. He now trails Canadian Ben Perry by 7 seconds. That's the news.
Bones found at a school breached tikanga.
Dead or alive, that person deserves to be treated with the mana and dignity that anyone else should be dealt with.
The Black Caps are beaten by Australia.
I think if you lined up the two sides experience-wise, Australia would probably pip New Zealand at the moment.
And it's bye-bye to Boris Johnson.
I am now like one of those booster rockets, and I will now be gently re-entering the atmosphere and splashing down in some remote and obscure corner of the Pacific.
Big Stories Morning Report, weekdays from 6 on RNZ National.
You're on Checkpoint next with Lisa Owen. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. From Northland to Waikato, also Coromandel and Bay of Plenty, partly cloudy, isolated showers in the far north today. From Waitomo to Kapiti, including Taumarunui, Taupo and Taihape, partly cloudy with a few showers. From Gisborne to Wairarapa, also for Wellington, fine apart from isolated afternoon or evening showers for Hawke's Bay and the Tararua district today, and a few showers in Wellington tomorrow. Fine today for Nelson and Marlborough, a few showers tomorrow. Bulla and Westland, partly cloudy with isolated showers, becoming fine in Westland tomorrow. For Canterbury and Otago, mostly cloudy with scattered rain or showers, clearing Otago overnight and Canterbury tomorrow. Snow lowering to around 900 metres. Southland and Fiordland, rain easing this afternoon, mainly fine tomorrow. And for Rekohu, the Chatham Islands, partly cloudy with a few showers. It's just gone 7 minutes past 5. I'll be back with headlines and any traffic news at about 20 past 5.
Nā mihi iwi, tēnā koutou katoa, no mai haere mai ki Checkpoint I tēnei rā, ko Lisa Owen tēnei. It's a lockdown border bungle, complete with innuendo and allegations of prostitution, gang links and fraud, followed by a massive police operation. But documents show none of it can be proved, and there's a queue now for apologies with a mongrel mob leader at the front. Police have released new information about 3 women who travelled across the Auckland border to Northland, unwittingly taking COVID there and prompting a lockdown. At the time, former Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters said the women were sex workers with connections to Harry Tam. The police information shows that's not true, and they were mistakenly given permission to travel by a government department. Here's our political reporter, Katie Scotcher.
Cast your mind back to early October last year. At a late-night press conference, the government confirmed Northland would go into lockdown after COVID-19 slipped across the Auckland boundary.
Based on advice from public health officials, we have agreed to move Northland to alert level 3 from 11:59pm this evening.
2 women had tested positive for COVID-19 after arriving in the region and were refusing to cooperate with contact tracers. Officials believed they had travelled widely across Northland with others. The COVID-19 minister at the time, Chris Hipkins, also suggested they may have used false information to get across the border.
My understanding at this point, and I want to be clear that this is not yet verified, is that the person obtained a document by providing false information in order to get the document to travel across the border. By the time that the falsity of that information had been identified and the document had been revoked, they were already in Northland at that point.
But police documents released to RNZ under the Official Information Act show that while a detective thought information used to get the border exemption was incorrect, police concluded it was bona fide. Mr Hipkins is refusing to apologise for accusing the women of using false information to travel across the border.
I don't want to get into all of the ins and outs of that at the time. We were making decisions based on the information that we had available. I was very, very clear in all of my comments at the time that much of the information that we had was not fully confirmed.
There was also speculation the women were sex workers with links to the mongrel mob, which at the time the Minister wouldn't confirm nor deny.
Are you aware of their occupation?
No, I'm not.
News Hub's been told it is that the woman is a sex worker. Can you confirm that?
No, I can't.
Do they have a criminal record of any kind?
I don't have that information.
But you must have theories about their intentions in the north.
Oh, look, we can all have theories, but I don't have any confirmed information on that.
Former Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters also claimed the women were prostitutes and that mongrel mob leader Harry Tam had helped them travel to Northland. Mr Peters later issued a correction and apologised for making the allegations. The police found no evidence the women had any connection to Mr Tam, the mongrel mob, or were involved in prostitution. Mr Tam says he informed health officials the women did not have gang links and they should have corrected the public record much sooner.
Out of all this, no one got named. I got named. If anyone that should be getting an apology, it should be me. Because those officials could have cleared that up right away when they knew who those women were and they had no gang affiliations. They should have spoken up, but they didn't.
The police documents also confirm the women were granted the border exemption by mistake. Mr Hipkins admitted in October the Ministry of Social Development approved and then revoked their clearance. This has annoyed Far North Mayor John Carter, who says Northland was plunged into lockdown because Wellington bureaucracy got it wrong.
It's the silent, arrogant, invisible bloody Wellington bureaucrats that are frustrating, that don't know where we are. I don't think they even know where the provinces are. And in this case, we'd been locked down because we had the Auckland border across us anyway, and then somebody makes a mistake. It puts another 2 weeks on, puts more businesses at risk, puts jobs at risk.
These Kaikohe locals also found the lockdown frustrating.
We should get an apology because everyone was in a colour. We were in orange, I think. And then they put us back in red. I think it was a big blunder from the government.
Down last year was like, wow, here we go again. You know, it was quite disappointing at times.
The government is defending the decision to put Northland into lockdown. At the time, just 70% of Northland's population had received one dose of the vaccine. Mr Hipkins says ministers agreed to impose the restrictions to protect the region's people.
Northland Chamber of Commerce President Tim Robinson says now there's more detail about what actually happened. Local businesses are angry and feel deceived by the government.
Look, I think in the very first instance it was, quite bitter disappointment. And I think that, look, in the first instance, yep, people are going, that's a bit of a bummer because, we probably endured a lockdown that we didn't have to just because of human error. But I think, the immediate reaction was, oh, well, okay, look, somebody made a mistake. We accept that. We're business people. We make mistakes. We're all human beings. But I think, as the day has sort of unpacked today, and in particular, I guess political figures have started to make various sort of statements, there's probably been a bit of a hardening of attitude when there's I guess there hasn't actually been any acknowledgement that, in fact, yes, it was a mistake, and yes, we didn't fess up to it at the time and try and make good on the mistake that had been made. And I think the point that's been made to me a few times throughout the day by various people that I've spoken to was that, it's all very well, business will generally forgive and forget and move on. If when somebody's made a mistake or made an error, they simply put their hand up and say, look, sorry, got that wrong. Here's what should have happened. Apologise for that, and we'll all move on. What's actually happened in this instance is there's been an awful lot of doubling down, and I think particularly from the political people. And in essence, it's almost sort of like a holier than thou. Well, we were simply doing what we thought was right at the time, and there's no need to apologise. There's certainly no need to even acknowledge that the mistake created absolute havoc for the business community and for the wider population. And I think that's the part which I think as the day has worn on, people have got probably a little bit hot under the collar about.
Yeah. So are people angry, Tim?
Oh, look, sure, they absolutely are, and I think, as I say, it's just more that refusal to take any responsibility and to simply acknowledge and apologise.
Well, the Minister Chris Hipkins, who was the COVID minister at the time, he's had a press conference today and he's basically said there's nothing to see here. And his exact words were, all of this was a matter of public record at the time. Do you see it that way? Do you agree that it was all out there and explained like this at the time?
Absolutely not, because from what I understand from the documents that have been released, I'm not sure whether it was MSD or MB, but one of those organisations did advise Hipkins, or at least his office, that a mistake had been made and that in fact these people were legit. Now, I think what people are so hot under the collar about is that the politicians then allowed all of the innuendo and I guess scuttlebutt of what these, who those ladies might have been, i.e. prostitutes, so they were associated with the mongrel mob, all sorts of, as I say, quite malicious, in the end, lies and rumours that flew around for an awful long time. Now, Hipkins could have actually nipped that in the bud at the very first press conference by simply queuing up and saying, look, what's actually happened here is a clerical error. There's nothing to be seen here. There is no, there's nothing untoward. These are legitimate people who thought they had a legitimate exemption to travel through, but instead of which it turned into an absolute public debacle.
Okay, so he also says the priority at the time was to keep Northland safe from Delta. And it turns out that there was a positive case in these women travelling, right? So the point is that they potentially would have done things exactly the same, regardless of whether the exemption was legitimate or not, because they wanted to contain the spread of COVID. They would have locked you down anyway, is what he's saying.
Yeah, and again, look, I think particularly from the business community perspective, we actually accept that, and I don't think anybody again would have argued about having to go into the lockdown, but it would on the basis that it would have been quite a legitimate reason for the how it happened. Because what the bone of contention right now is actually the argument around, well, actually, what was the how and what was the reason why, and I think that's the part which we feel quite misled about, and we just don't think people are telling the truth.
What was the consequence of that further 11-day lockdown for business?
Yeah, so look, unfortunately, I don't have the information in front of me, but I believe at the time, I think the officials put the number at about $1 million a day. So, 11 days, $11 million. That's a serious chunk of change to take out of a local economy up here.
So if you believe you were basically having the wool pulled over your eyes and things were being fudged, what do you need now to put it right?
Well, we are absolutely renewing the call. The previous calls had been made for a full independent inquiry of the handling of the pandemic, because I think this is a fantastic example of where something was done simply in error and was completely botched in terms of how it was managed. And I think that there need to be some serious learnings taken out of this rather unfortunate affair. And I would strongly be pushing for that independent inquiry, which I know the government is refusing to accept and to do anything with. But I think that probably underpins, it's actually an essential action that needs to happen now, because there will be future pandemics or issues that that are going to affect the level of control that has to be around the country. So we need to take the learnings of what's happened here and make sure that we're far better prepared in the future.
Would sorry help?
Absolutely.
And that's the Northland Chamber of Commerce President, Tim Robinson. It is 18 minutes after 5. Kia mau tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. Keen to get your feedback on that one. Do you think we need an independent inquiry into how COVID and the pandemic was handled, full stop? And what do you think about the level of transparency around that particular incident? 2101 on text, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or the email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Northlanders say slow progress on their region's broken roads is going to cost lives and keep a chokehold on the region's economy. The indefinite closure of the Mangamuka Gorge for the second time in as many years has them asking why State Highway 1 isn't held to the same standard in Taitokoro as it is in other parts of the country. Katie Todd and cameraman Nathan McKinnon have the story.
Kaitaia, the gateway to the north, now that bit further from the rest of the country. While Waka Kotahi takes on the gargantuan task of repairing State Highway 1, which has been swept away in 15 spots by Mother Nature, locals like Ian Walker, a business owner and farmer, are seeing their day-to-day freight costs rise by the thousands of dollars.
It's quite significant because it's an extra 30 minutes driving. It's already expensive to bring goods send goods away from Kaitaia because of the state of our roads. To me, State Highway 1 should be to a decent standard from the Cape to the Bluff, not just through Auckland or the Waikato, but the whole length of the road.
People from Mangamuka, like Karoria, say their side of the gorge is even worse off. The township comprises of a smattering of houses, one dairy and one radio station. It used to be 20 minutes drive to Kaitaia. Now any lifeline services are at least an hour's drive away. Karoria says even the diversion road is rain damaged and scary.
We've got locals who would normally shop in Kaitaia, perhaps go to school or work in Kaitaia, having to go the long way round. I know of one teacher that lives in Horeke, and their daily commute is now 3.5 hours to get to work. On top of being a teacher, that's a long day. So I really worry about the impact on whānau with the road closures, and I think that we need to provide more of a wraparound kind of approach, because it's not just a road. It's actually access to education, work, and all of the things that we need to exist.
What unites these people is a sense that Northland's roading infrastructure just doesn't get the attention it needs. Ian Walker reckons the Mangamuka Gorge has been a problem since the day it was built, never equipped for the heavy vehicles that use it.
We get temporary patches on potholes. So fixing a road like the Mangamuka Gorge is highly unlikely to be done correctly. Like it's one of the windiest stretches of road in the world, 13 kilometres of bends that practically come back on themselves. Trucks can't turn the corners on most of the corners because they're just too windy. They end up driving on the other side of the road. So, surely a geotech survey of the 13 kilometres, work out where all the weak points are and do the job properly, or find another route.
And speaking of potholes, that's a problem Karoria's partner John Baird keeps an eagle eye over. He runs the Northland Potholes Facebook page.
It was a bit more than I expected. It was kind of like, there was a bit of chat on one of our notice boards, so I thought, okay, I'll set up a pothole page to show them the pothole that was dangerous, see if anyone else does it. And then suddenly, almost overnight, there were 500 people on the thing.
High on the list of common complaints is State Highway 10 up the east coast. Although there's not so many potholes as much as narrow bridges, speed reductions and scalloping and dents of the road's surface. The problem is that's the diversion that drivers are meant to take to avoid the Mangamuka Gorge. John Baird argues the road's going to get worse.
Which means it's got the 50-tonne trucks, it means it's got the logging trucks, it means it's got a whole volume of cars, passenger transport that it doesn't normally have, or shouldn't normally have, and isn't really kind of spec'd for.
Take us seriously is the message from Northlanders to authorities. No more quick fixes. Even the council has requested for MPs to fly over and see the damage themselves. Karoria says if the gorge is going to be shut for another year, the government can't continue to ignore the plight of locals.
I understand that Nelson's had some devastating damage done to it, and I fully empathise with that. But they have a lot more population and infrastructure to support those people in the meantime. Mangamuka doesn't have that, and neither do the areas directly around Mangamuka. So I'd really like to see some sort of targeted intervention, not just in terms of how we approach the roading, but in terms of how we're taking care of the community in the meantime.
Waka Kotahi has been undertaking geotechnical assessments of the Mangamuka Gorge and expects to give an update this week.
And our reporter Katie Todd joins us live from Kaikoi. Kia ora, Katie. So you've got an update from Waka Kotahi about the road?
Kia ora. Yes, that update has just arrived in the form of a statement. And it sounds like pretty hairy work in the gorge at the moment. Workers are in there doing geotechnical assessments. That involves drilling down into the road to find out how stable it is. And they say at points they're actually having to drill down 20 metres to find solid rock. They're also looking at each of the 15 slips that have blocked the road. And apparently some of them are actually still highly unstable. Parts of the road are still moving. And then add to the workload, there's torrential rain in the forecast, so who knows what it will look like by the end of this week. So any locals who are wanting an update on the time frame, how long this is going to take to fix, they're out of luck just at the moment.
Thanks, Katie. That's Katie Todd, live from Kaikoui. She's on tour in the far north with cameraman Nate McKinnon. And if you want to check out the video version of that story you've just heard, it'll be on our webpage. It's 24 minutes after 5 and you're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. And Homai o Whakaaro, we would love your feedback on anything you've heard on the program this evening. Roads in Northland or the COVID border bungle involving Northland, or the documents revealed today showing no truth in the allegations about the women who crossed the border during the COVID pandemic. You can text us on 2101, tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ, or you can email checkpoint@rnz.co.nz. Let's go to the headlines now. Ko Evi anō tēnei.
Mongrel Mob Life member Harry Tam wants an apology after being wrongly named as being involved in the Northland COVID-19 lockdown. A police investigation has found 3 COVID-infected women who triggered an 11-day lockdown in Northland last October had no connection to Harry Tam or the Mongrel Mob. Northlanders are concerned slow progress on their region's broken roads will have a serious effect on their communities and could cost lives. State Highway 1 at the Mangamuka Gorge, just south of Kaitaia, is closed indefinitely because 15 areas of the road have been washed out in storms. Health New Zealand, Te Whatu Ora, says the country is moving into a new stage of the COVID pandemic, but it's not out of the woods yet. Deputy Director General of Health, Andrew Auld, says modelling shows a big summer outbreak is unlikely, but that could change if a new variant emerges, as happened in the Northern Hemisphere summer. Selwyn District Council is being taken to the Environment Court after it greenlit a housing development to go ahead on prime farmland. The group taking the council to court, Lincoln Voice, says the land should be protected as it contains rare soil types best suited to farming. And Hong Kong is raising its alert level for monkeypox after recording its first case of the virus. Health officials say the risk of an outbreak is low, but are urging close contacts of the patient to seek medical help if they feel unwell. Those are the headlines. Looking at traffic, no crashes or delays reported. Meanwhile, in Auckland, there's going to be a full closure of eastbound lanes on State Highway 16 between Parnell Rise and Quay Street tonight, along with some other motorway closures you might want to check before you travel. Our next news headlines and traffic is at 5:40.
Kia ora rā e ho. The Silver Ferns squad to face Jamaica in a 3-test home series has been named. Captain Amelia-Ann Ekianasio is back after 18 months out after giving birth to her second child. She's been restored as captain following the team's leadership voting process and says to have the backing of her teammates is huge.
I don't even know if you can rate it, but yeah, I definitely feel a huge sense of pride. I mean, just a huge sense of pride to have a chance to wear the black dress again, and now stepping back into the captaincy role is huge as well, in a role that requires a lot of mana, I believe as well. So yeah, it's a lot to take on at once, and I'm definitely up for the challenge. I've always thought that I'm a player and a person that thrives more under pressure, so I'm just throwing myself in straight away, and there's no warming into it.
And we're joined now by our sports reporter Felicity Reid. So the squad, has it changed much from the side that got bronze at last month's Commonwealth Games?
There are 4 changes to that squad. So the big one that we've heard about just there, Amelia-Ann Ekianasio, she was around that Commonwealth Games squad. She was a reserve, but coming back into fitness, she had to meet those notorious Silver Ferns fitness standards. So that's why she's now back in with the squad. She will join Grace Wickie, Maya Wilson and Tapaya Selby-Rickett in the shooting circle. So that is a bit of a boost given after those games and that bronze finish. Moving down the court a little bit, mid-quarter, and Commonwealth Games captain Gina Crampton. She won't actually play against Jamaica. She has been given a sabbatical until December. She's been playing a bit of netball. So that's opened up a bit of mid-court space for Maddie Gordon and Mila Ruatu Buchanan. She comes in, and Shannon Saunders is also missing from the squad. She's pregnant. And defender Ali Timu is the only newcomer in the squad. She comes in for Kayla Johnson, who had a few knee injuries and worries while she was over at the Commonwealth Games. But again, Ali has been on that Commonwealth Games radar as well. She was a travelling reserve, went over to the Games, didn't get to play, obviously. And Jane Watson and Karen Berger are also two names that won't be with the squad.
So what are New Zealand's chances against Jamaica?
Well, the Sunshine Girls, they finished with the silver at the Commonwealth Games. So coming into that, they were the ones that knocked us out of contention for that gold medal match. So the last time we met them, just over a month ago, 16-goal win to Jamaica. They're coming in with a little bit of a different style than what they've had previously, which maybe can be credited to getting a bit more structure in their game. Rob Wright, who we might know with the Northern Mystics, an assistant coach there, he's been helping out with that, and I think he was really pleased with the defence that they showed over at those games.
Thank you for that. That is Felicity Reid, our sports reporter. Now, plans for a purpose-built beachside workers' village in Dunedin for out-of-town tradies has been considered by the council. It's expected construction of the new Dunedin hospital will bring an influx of fly-in, fly-out workers. So developers are seeking resource consent to convert an old caravan park in Brighton into worker accommodation with 46 one-bedroom units. Well, joining us now is Saddle Hill Community Board Chair Scott Wetherill. Kia ora, Scott.
Hi, good morning, Lisa. How are you?
I'm very well. Do you reckon this is a good idea or not?
Hey, as a community, we're always open to having new people come into our community, you know. I guess it's just got to be planned, it's got to be thought out, and biggest for us is communicated well with the community and for the community to be a part of the process.
So it seems like a big commitment. I mean, how many workers are you expecting to come into the region and how long are they going to stay around for?
I don't know what the number is, but I'd imagine it's a big build, so it's going to take a few. But it's my understanding is the expectation 8 to 10 years once the building starts, and we haven't got to that phase yet for a citywide new hospital. So yeah, we're not too far away though, hopefully.
So it is a long haul that you're planning for. What is there at the moment for people who don't know the area?
Yeah, so beautiful community is Brighton, 20 kilometres south of Dunedin. And what was there was a caravan park, but predominantly it was for permanent residents. So people who it was cost affordable accommodation really, and it worked very, very well for those residents, it really did. The man who owned that caravan park had the opportunity to sell it to this potential developer working on behalf of one of the large building firms, and he's obviously looking to take it the next step further.
What do you make of the design? It's 46 units, right? 6 by 3 metres, they say. And when you look at the documents for the resource consent, they reckon that's got a bathroom, cooking area and sleeping facilities. Sounds like a bit of a squeeze.
Yeah, my understanding is that they are looking at using the existing kitchen area, which is on site, as well as the toilets, bathrooms and bits pieces there. So I think majority of that space that you just talked about there will be predominantly the living space.
And how is the community feeling about it?
Well, the community are only just hearing about it, to be honest, as I am really. We knew it was a possibility, but now the developer has put a resource consent application in, so we're just welcoming any people in our community to put their thoughts forward. We have suggested to the developer to come on out to meet with our people and just have some drop-in sessions, and that way they can take the community with them, which we know is the best process.
Looking at the council documents, there seems to be quite a few restrictions, right? They're only allowed single beds in those units. Linen, laundry, uniforms have to be taken off site. No parking within 300 metres of the site. Have to be employed and take shared transport to work. I mean, what are people worried about? Can't you trust construction workers to be good neighbours?
Yeah, that sounds pretty restrictive, doesn't it? I don't disagree with you there. And I know that there has been some questions in and around the only 13 car parks. So we need to ensure that those people that are living there moving forward have adequate resources. That's absolutely crucial. But also thinking about how they can add value back to our community. We've got the volunteer fire brigade. I'm sure some of the guys might have some capability in that space. We've got a beautiful cafe and a wonderful dairy that I'm sure they'll be a part of.
Well, they'll bring money in, won't they, Scott?
Absolutely, yeah, they sure will. So bolster our local community, our existing community assets. We've got a rugby club. I'm sure some of the guys might be going and play some footy, do some coaching, as well as, like I say, be a part of the fire brigade. There's community clubs that will definitely benefit from these people coming in.
Appreciate your time. That's Scott Wetherall, who's the chair of the Saddle Hill Community Board, talking there about this plan to build a beachside workers' village, because they're expecting fly-in, fly-out construction workers for about 8 years. Now, we've just had some information in from the police about a death thought to be related to MDMA in Christchurch. 2 people have been arrested and police are continuing to investigate the sudden death of a 20-year-old who died in Christchurch in the early hours of Sunday. A man and a woman, both aged 33, have been charged with possession for supply of a Class B drug. Now, police say they can't rule out more serious charges. Police have also been made aware of security guards in Queenstown over the weekend assisting 2 people who had seizures after reportedly taking MDMA. Detective Senior Sergeant Malcolm Ingalls says with a music festival in Queenstown from tomorrow until Sunday, the police are issuing this warning as they don't want to see anyone else becoming sick or worse. So a warning there about, well, I suppose it's the quality of MDMA that is being sold and circulating. It is 25 minutes to 6. Kia mau tunu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National, and it's time for the business news. Ko taku hoa I Nai ko Nona Peltier. Nona, rebalancing unpaid work between men and women, a crucial step in addressing gender inequality. Can I stop doing the dishes? Is that what that means?
Yeah, it does, actually, Lisa. That's exactly what it's talking about here. It's saying share the load more with your partner. It depends on, I guess, the gender thing.
Yeah.
But let's just stick with the gender imbalance in the home or wherever. It exists in the workplace, and primarily it's because women spend more time doing unpaid work than men. So 47% of the workforce is made up of women, but if you targeted 50%, which is what this effort is about, then presumably, according to these guys, that in 8 years from now, if we could reach that target, which is about how long it might take, so you better stop with the dishes sooner than later, because you'd be doing your part. Yes, it is. But, there's a lot of, childcare is one of the big issues right there. You can't fix this quickly. If you could, we would have fixed it already, right?
Yeah, one assumes so.
So, look, it's something that a group of high-level chief executives of leading companies and chairs of boards have got together and said, let's do this. So there you go.
Now, scammers. This is an interesting one. So they've kind of gone real next level here, impersonating the New Zealand Superannuation Fund online to try and con people out of their money. The thing is, individuals cannot invest in the New Zealand Super Fund, right? So what should people be looking out for?
Well, if it sounds too good to be true, it definitely is. That's one thing for sure. So scammers will tend to really butter you up with a great offer. They'll make presentations to you. Most of the time, it's unsolicited. You're not actually asking for help. You're not going to a financial advisor.
Yeah.
Somebody's come to you and offered you something. That's a warning sign right there. And the super fund certainly will never do that. They don't go through Facebook to solicit investment. That doesn't happen. The super fund is the pension fund. They take a long-term horizon, and they are big investors in big projects. They're not going to be interested in dollars and cents. No. So,
but
and they're not alone.
Are convincing, are they?
They're
convincing, and they start small.
Yes.
And once they've hooked you in, they ratchet up.
There's all kinds of scammers out there, and one of the things to always be alert for that. If somebody's come to you with an unsolicited offer, that's usually a warning sign right there.
Yeah, okay. What can you tell us about the markets today, Nona?
Well, we fell 51 points, and not surprising with the way the markets are looking these days. 0.4% down to 11,548. The dollar is trading weaker, and that also isn't a surprise.
Every day you say that.
Well, I'll tell you what, the US dollar is to blame for this. I mean, it's at a 24-year peak against the yen and new highs against the Australian and New Zealand currency.
So how much are we buying then?
60.1 US cents. And I'll tell you, we went below 60 cents today.
Okay.
Yeah, not good. But not too bad against the Australian at 89.5, which is where we've been for a while. And the pence holding fairly steady at 52.4.
Thank you, Nona. Nona Peltier with business news there. It is, 23 minutes to 6. A lot of feedback coming in on the Northland issue, and this is the border situation. We'll get to that shortly. Keep your feedback coming, homai or whakaaro, but let's read some of it now. And this is from someone who says, I'm a Northlander. I'm not angry at the government protecting us when those ladies brought COVID to Northland. Another person says, why were these women in Northland? Well, the documents actually show they had business reasons to be in Northland, made an application under that category, were declined, made another application using the same information and were approved. And the OAO documents say that the reasons for coming there were legitimate. Sarah says, I suspect the government is reluctant to admit it's made a mistake because that would leave it liable for claims for compensation from rightly disgruntled businesses. Another person says, wasn't it opposition parties and the media that did all the speculation? No, former Deputy Prime Minister Winston Peters made allegations in respect of gang associations and prostitution. Another person says, I think those women deserve an apology. They've been called prostitutes in front of the entire country. And Daphne says GPs in Northland were desperate to keep Delta out of their under-immunised populations. They were trying to save lives. Lockdown was the least that could be done till the immunisation rates were acceptable. Death is forever. Business can revive. And Tarek from Wellington says, regarding COVID response, 99% of criticism in 2020 hindsight. Facing a situation with no precedent, the government took decisions based on information at the time. So give us a break from the incessant criticism. Yeah, and I suppose the point is here, the COVID minister says he wouldn't make a difference, former COVID minister he is now, he would have still done lockdown regardless of whether these women were there legitimately. And I don't think that's what people are questioning. They're questioning the process for assessing the woman's application to get in and how it was handled after that. On whether there is a need for an independent inquiry, this person says, no, don't need it. We were in a state of emergency. The government was doing their best to try and save lives. Sue says, just thank the government for saving lives. Negative excess deaths in New Zealand, saving us from that. Thank you for your feedback. Do keep it coming. 2101 on text or tweet us at Checkpoint RNZ. Let's scoot over to Evie, who's got the headlines. Anea Evie, mena pita pita kōrero.
Kia ora, Lisa. Northland businesses say they're angry about losses incurred during the 11-day lockdown in 2021 after it was revealed the women who sparked the lockdown had their travel permit approved in error. Northland Chamber of Commerce President Tim Robinson told Checkpoint the lockdown cost the local economy $1 million a day. The Deputy Director General of Health says COVID-19 modelling shows a long tail of declining cases for the next few months. Andrew Auld says that suggests a big summer outbreak is unlikely as long as no new variant emerges. Police are investigating the sudden death of a 20-year-old who died in Christchurch in the early hours of Sunday. A man and woman, both aged 33, have been charged with possession for supply of a Class B drug. Police say they can't rule out more serious charges. The UN Secretary-General, Antonio Guterres, is urging Russian forces to withdraw from the occupied Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plants in Ukraine. The American manufacturer of e-cigarettes, Juul Labs, has agreed to pay out nearly $430 million to combat tobacco use after an investigation found it had marketed its products to underage teenagers. And the Silver Ferns squad, who will face Jamaica in a 3-test home series, has been announced today. It includes Amelia-Ann Icinacio, who's back as captain after 18 months out after giving birth to her second child. Those are the headlines. In traffic news, no new delays or crashes or anything of that sort to report on any of the main routes or highways. I will have our next news and weather at 6.
Ngā mihi, Evie. Auckland City Rail Link is nearing a significant milestone with the tunnel boring phase of the project almost completed. Earlier today, the Prime Minister took a tour from Mount Eden Station through the first of the tunnels to check on the progress. Reporter Tom Taylor and camera operator Nick Monroe headed underground to capture the action.
We're here at Te Waihoretiu Station, what feels a long way underground, standing outside the entrance to 2 massive rail tunnels. The first of which has already been bored through from Mount Eden, and the second of which, just behind me, is due to be completed any day now. There's nearly a light at the end of the tunnel for Auckland's City Rail link. The boring of the second of the twin tunnels from Mount Eden to Britomart is due for completion by the end of the month, while workers are already starting to lay tracks at the Waitemata end of the line. Today, Prime Minister Jacinda Ardern and Transport Minister Michael Wood were taken on an electric buggy ride of more than 3 kilometres from Mount Eden to Aotea, or Te Waihoretiu station. Ms Ardern said the journey put the sheer scale of the project in perspective.
For residents in Auckland, they see the activity above ground compared to the activity underground. It's just enormous. So I'm looking forward to the day when New Zealanders will be able to see it for themselves.
Minister Wood said that when completed, the City Rail link would provide the equivalent passenger capacity of 16 lanes of motorway.
What you are seeing here is the heart of a new mass rapid transit system for Auckland. This will double the capacity of our city's heavy rail network.
The link would eventually integrate with Auckland's light rail, harbour crossing and rapid transit to the northwest. But the minister couldn't confirm an updated budget for the project, which had already increased by $1 billion. While negotiations were still underway with the 6 companies involved in its design and construction.
We have a current project budget of $4.5 billion. It's been well signalled that those long months of COVID delays where the site had to be effectively closed down or significantly reduced in terms of its activity are going to create some push out in terms of the opening date and some additional costs. Those are still under negotiations with the main contractor, and we have to allow that process to work through.
Likewise, City Rail Link Chief Executive Sean Sweeney could not yet provide an updated end date, with COVID-related delays still being worked through.
We were advising a December 24 completion date. That was the beginning of 2021. Since then, we've had nearly 300 days of COVID impacted restrictions. We've had 2 lockdowns. We've had Omicron. We've had about 100 days of Auckland borders. All of those things would have impacted that date.
He aimed to have a clearer timeline in place by the end of the year. The rail link has had its share of staffing struggles, with the project short of 100 steel workers in January, although Mr Sweeney said the situation had improved in recent months.
It looked like a set of a sort of a horror movie sometimes. You come into site and there was no one here. And you really started wondering where's this all going to end, but they kept turning up.
The project's now had about 2,000 people working on it, with 21 rangatahi also securing full-time employment through an internship program. Meanwhile, the businesses near Aotea Station, especially those on Albert Street, continue to be impacted by noisy construction and road closures. A targeted hardship fund had been set up for these businesses, but only a quarter had been given out so far.
They've allocated 12 million, we've spent 3 million, so we've still got enough money to keep making payments for some time to come.
And that story was from Tom Taylor, filmed by Nick Monroe. The video will be on our webpage. Check it out. You can see their colour-coordinated hard hats. It is 5:45. Kia mau tonu mai. Stay with us. You're listening to Checkpoint on RNZ National. A former Gloriavale woman has told a court how she hurt her back repeatedly lifting 20-kilogram crates of meat above her head in the Christian community's freezer. Rebecca Kempf says she started work as a little girl and never refused as a teenager because she was terrified of what might happen. Jean Edwards reports from the Employment Court in Christchurch.
Rebecca Kempf worked at Gloriavale from the age of 6, but it's her job lifting heavy crates of meat in the freezer that she remembers the most.
To me, life in Gloriavale was lifting 20 kg crates above my head on a stool, on a wet, slippery floor, on my own for hours on end in freezing temperatures.
She told the court it was minus 18 degrees in the freezer and she had permanent frostbite on her fingers.
I often would be struggling to get the crate up and I'd rest it part way. My legs would be shaking. Then I'd just somehow, I don't know how, I'd just lift the baskets. It was adrenaline probably.
Mrs. Kempf says there was often no one to lend a hand and she didn't get any help for a back injury when she lived at Gloriavale.
Countless times I cried because I was in so much pain. I didn't want to be there working. But in Gloriavale, what do you do?
She says she was told from a young age that she had no talent except to serve God and was fat.
I was told a number of times that I couldn't have been a Christian if I was fat because it proved that I wasn't disciplining myself.
Mrs. Kempf says Gloriavale's leaders were always talking about saving money.
So in high school, they said they were going to stop buying women's sanitary products. So I stocked my drawer full because I was told we'll have to go back to using sphagnum moss.
The court has heard evidence women and girls were exposed to sexual harassment and abuse at the Christian community. Rebecca Kempf says she was also targeted.
When I was 14, I went through serious depression because somebody looked over the shower at me. And I obviously thought somehow that it was my fault. That's how we'd been taught our whole lives.
Mrs. Kemp's sister, Hannah Harrison, also testified about unwanted attention from Gloriavale men, including overseeing shepherd Howard Temple.
I was scared of old men. When my dad was in India, Howard used to say hello to me a lot and give me hugs from behind that I didn't like. At the time, he said stuff like, "Oh, has anyone told you today that they love you?" It made me feel like I was important, but I never liked the hug thing.
Another leaver, Rosanna Overcomer, told the court children were whacked and shamed as punishment and missed meals. She says lunches stopped when she was 10.
We maybe got a bottle of milk for lunch, and then they sometimes gave us a cheese stick, and we used to go and melt it on the stove after lunch to make it bigger because we thought it would fill us up more that way. I can just remember being cold and hungry all the time.
The women have given testimony for 6 former members who want the court to rule they were Gloriavale employees, a claim its leaders strongly deny.
Jean Edwards reporting there. An in-home disability support worker says she'd never work for a for-profit care organisation. She's backing calls for an inquiry into the model, which advocates say results in unreliable and inconsistent care. Wellington care worker Sharon Callaghan is self-employed and says done well, the job can be very rewarding. Our reporter Rosie Gordon and cameraman Samuel Rilstone joined Sharon for a morning to see what the job's like.
Sharon Callaghan cares for 3 people a week, each with varying needs. Her week starts picking up 12-year-old Malia and their sister Laura.
Malia is in the process of getting support for some anxiety, and one of the things that they identified, Malia identified, was that it would be really helpful to just go to school 3 days a week and have the days in between at home, learning from home. So we decided that having somebody who was not mum, but was familiar and kind of got them, was able to come and bring them to school.
After the school drop-off, Ms Callaghan checks in with her colleague. Together they care for a 25-year-old living with multisensory disabilities who's lost the ability to speak.
In terms of medication, is there anything that you're running low on?
There's the escitalopram, which I let you know about yesterday, which you were hopefully going to find today.
Awesome, yep.
Other than that, I have at least 2 weeks of just about everything else.
Sharon Callaghan visits her second client of the day. Mirren is a 23-year-old, and while she's young and studying for a master's degree, a connective tissue disorder affects her mobility, restricting how far she can walk and how much she can move. Ms Callaghan is on call for her 24/7.
That aspect of it's quite hard. You might get a message in the night time saying, you know, are you available? There's a crisis.
Mirren's condition means she gets injured easily. During our visit, Mirren's shoulder dislocates.
Do you know that your shoulder's dislocated right now?
Mirren also relies on Sharon to help out with admin and housework. Te Whatu Ora Health NZ recently admitted complaints about in-home care had doubled from 2019 to 2021. Disability advocates say for-profit care work results in poor training and communication with providers, while staffing shortages see care workers rush from client to client and in some cases not show up at all. Mirren worries for those who don't receive the same quality of care that she does.
Sharon knows everything about me, and it means that essentially I know that any need that I have that needs to be taken care of can be taken care of. I don't have to wait for someone who is like, oh, I can do strapping, or I can't do strapping, or I don't know how to strap that specific thing. I have someone who I know can be there and doing all of the different range of cares that I might need.
Being self-employed means Ms Callaghan can spend more quality time with a small number of clients, but she's well aware of the problems in the sector.
People not showing up when they were needed to be there, people coming without an understanding of what they were there for in the early stages of the new client, working newly with that client, coordination nightmares for the companies themselves. I think I would find it very frustrating.
For Sharon Callaghan, getting to know clients and seeing them through ups and downs outweighs everything else. She's encouraging more would-be care workers to join the industry.
The Home and Community Health Association has accepted there are issues, but says no care organisation is making greater profits than necessary. It is 7 minutes to 6. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. A lightweight plastic mountain hut that can withstand extreme conditions and be choppered to remote locations could be the future of backcountry accommodation and beyond. The huts, called Turks, are built from 26,000 litre plastic water tanks, so are waterproof, and there's currently 6 in use, 5 between Treble Cone and Coronet Peak. They're built by volunteers and are way cheaper than some of your traditional mountain huts, according to adventurer and designer Eric Bradshaw, and he joins us now. Kia ora, Eric.
Hello.
Hey, how did you come up with this idea? What motivated you?
Well, probably many nights in frozen, cold, ice-covered tents and sort of thinking not many people are prepared to suffer like that, to be in the mountains, especially in winter. So over many years, I've thought about this problem of how do you make a lightweight hut that can get in. And I thought of ideas like carrying sacks of cement into the mountains and plastering rocks together and things like that. Then I finally came across the idea of using a plastic water tank. I wasn't the first to think of all the different uses of a plastic water tank, but I definitely sort of took the quality of it to a new standard.
Yeah, so it's a step up from your freezing cold tent. Can you talk us through, though, what it is in terms of the level of luxury? Is there cooking? Is there toilet facilities? What is inside these huts?
Okay, so there is a toilet. It is outside. It's a separate building. They're 10 square metres. They're round like a water tank. They've got 4 bunks. They're fully insulated, they're double glazed, so even that might be, say, minus 10 degrees outside with 4 people inside, it's a comfortable temperature. They have cooking facilities, they have all the sort of stuff that makes your pack heavy when you go into the mountains already in them. So you can pretty well go in with, kind of a day pack and some lightweight food and have a really enjoyable night or two.
Eric, what stops you blowing off the side of the mountain? Because water tanks, well, it's light enough to fly underneath a chopper, right?
Yes. So in the water tank, there's a false floor. So there's a sort of 250 millimetre gap between the wooden floor and the bottom of the tank, and that has 3 tonnes of gravel loaded into it. So they're basically a ballasted structure. They're engineered to withstand winds up to 300 kilometres an hour, which is a lot faster than anything recorded in New Zealand.
And you reckon they're cheaper than what, your traditional dock hut? How would they compare?
Yes, well, if you work it out on cost per bunk, like the cost of a dock hut divided by the number of bunks, you're typically looking at between $50,000 and $70,000 per bunk. So a 10-person hut might cost $700,000. We've installed these with 4 bunks, and the total cost, including everything, including resource consents and everything, was $20,000 per Turk. So it's $5,000 per bunk. So you're looking at a 10-fold cheaper than what a sort of Department of Conservation approach would be. Admittedly, they're only small, it doesn't scale, but as far as a small hut, it's incredible.
And just so we're clear, this isn't a business thing for you, right? This is for the love of, adventures and hoping that other people can have them as well. So are there any on Dockland?
No, there's none on Dockland. There's 3 in the Antarctic, there's 6 in New Zealand. There's a huge community support to build these things. You're right, I'm just doing it for the love and the fun and getting together with good people. The difficult part in this project is working through bureaucracy and just getting the permission to build them. And then once you've got the permission, to get 50 people together to go, yahoo, let's do this, let's make it happen, it's quite easy. So that's our hurdle. And I've yet to really tackle the Department of Conservation one.
Do you think there are other applications for this? Because, I mean, you turn on the news these days and you see, half of cities, half of countries washed away, emergencies all over the place, and housing becomes a real problem with people displaced in emergencies. Do you think these are useful for that?
They're definitely very useful from the point of view of low cost and also being able to fly them in by helicopter. If you've got truck access, you've got quite a few different options. But if you've only got helicopter access because roads are cut off, they're a very good solution.
So plans for expansion in New Zealand then, Eric? Where can we next expect to see one of these huts?
Probably more in the South Island. It's really just finding, as I said before, the people to work through the bureaucracy and get the permissions. We have a club structure. We've got, a lot of money. Well, not a lot of money, but, for a club, we're adequately financed. So, in the mountains, because that's really my passion.
And I understand that you are, you're prepared to let anyone use the intellectual property. Is that right? The design, you haven't...
Yeah, I have in some of my other inventions gone down the path of patents and copyrights, and it's just throwing money in a bucket. Well, no, it's just throwing money out the door, actually. So, I mean, I don't care if people copy, but I do care that they do it to a high quality, because what I don't want is a whole lot of low quality sort of knockoffs and bad copies.
Really appreciate your time, Eric. That's Eric Bradshaw, designer and adventurer. And check out our webpage. We'll put a link to those huts. They're pretty cool, compact, as he says, and apparently quite cheap compared to your normal standard hut. Hey, lots of you still getting in touch regarding the Northland situation, both roads and COVID. On roads, this person says, for all the areas that rail can reach, wouldn't we save huge roading costs if we transported our products by rail and get these extremely large, heavy trucks that are chewing up our tar seal off the roads? I think the overwhelming feedback regarding the call for an inquiry into how COVID has been handled is no thanks. Someone says, no inquiry required in Northland. Let's get on with life. There's been billions spent on COVID already. How on earth would you calculate what business lost what? I don't think they're just talking about Northland. They want a wider inquiry. Julie says, for goodness sake, apologies. Those people should get over themselves. Mistakes were made. Lives were saved. Let's get on with it. Echoed in much of your feedback. No apology required, this person says.
RNZ News at 6. Good evening. Kia ora tātou. Ko Evie Ashton tēnei. Northland businesses are asking for an apology for losses incurred during last year's 11-day lockdown. New information reveals the women who sparked the lockdown had no links to gangs and weren't sex workers, as alleged at the time. The restrictions were imposed when the trio tested positive for COVID-19 after travelling to the region from Auckland. Their permit to travel had been approved in error. Northland Chamber of Commerce President Tim Robinson has told Checkpoint the lockdown cost the local community $1 million a day.
There hasn't actually been any acknowledgement that, in fact, yes, it was a mistake, and yes, we didn't fess up to it at the time and try and make good on the mistake that had been made.
Tim Robinson says the lockdown created havoc for the business community, and while they accept mistakes happen, there's been a refusal to take responsibility by the government. Health NZ says the country is moving into a new stage of the COVID pandemic, but isn't out of the woods yet. Both case numbers and hospitalisations are at their lowest point since February. Te Whatu Order's Deputy Director General of Health, Andrew Auld, says modelling shows there will likely be a long tail of declining cases for the next few months. He says it suggests a big summer outbreak is unlikely, but that could change if a new variant emerges, as happened in the northern summer. He says masking and vaccination will remain important. Former Speaker Trevor Mallard's move to trespass Winston Peters from Parliament has cost the taxpayer more than $23,000 in legal fees. Mr Mallard trespassed the former Deputy Prime Minister after he visited the anti-mandate occupation in May. The trespass notice was quickly withdrawn, but Mr Peters is still pursuing a judicial review. An answer to a written parliamentary question from the National Party shows the legal fees total more than $23,000 so far. This includes charges for correspondence, meetings and preparing legal documents. The High Court in Auckland has heard how several defendants in a trial over concealed political donations weren't aware of electoral disclosure rules. 7 people are defending charges laid by the Serious Fraud Office of obtaining by deception. The Crown alleges 3 separate donations were split into smaller amounts among sham donors to avoid triggering the disclosure limit and to keep the public in the dark about the identity of the true donor, businessman Jung Iquin. Paul Dacre QC, representing businessman Colin Jun, whom the Crown alleges was among those taking part in the scheme, told the court his client, a Justice of the Peace, wasn't aware of the Electoral Act requirements.
There's another way of looking at this, and that is to say, well, look, it's such a shambles, nobody seems to know how these donations are done.
Northlanders are worried slow progress on fixing broken roads will have serious effects on local communities. State Highway 1 at the Mangamuka Gorge, just south of Kaitaia, is closed indefinitely because 15 areas of the road have been washed out in storms. Mangamuka local Karodia says some parts of the alternative routes are also in bad shape. She says she's concerned about the impact of the road closures on whānau who are unable to get to work or school. A report by the Washington Post says some of the classified documents seized by FBI agents at the Florida home of Donald Trump last month were so sensitive that even the Biden administration's most senior national security officials weren't cleared to examine them. One document reportedly detailed the nuclear capabilities and military defences of an unnamed foreign power. The BBC's Peter Bowes has more.
The Washington Post says its report is based on information provided by people familiar with the matter, but the identity of the foreign government, whose nuclear capabilities are supposedly outlined in the document, has not been revealed. Nor has it been reported where on Donald Trump's Mar-a-Lago estate it was found. If true, the implications for the US and the wider world could be hugely significant. The paper said there was no immediate comment from Donald Trump's team.
Police are warning drug users to take extreme care after the death of a Canterbury man in what's believed to be an overdose related to the drug MDMA. The 20-year-old died in the early hours of Sunday, September 4th. Police have charged a man and woman, both aged 33, with possession of supply of a Class B drug. They're expected to appear in the Christchurch District Court tomorrow. Police say security guards in Queenstown at the weekend helped 2 people who had seizures after reportedly taking MDMA. A local council is being taken to the Environment Court after it allowed a development to go ahead on prime farmland. Selwyn District Council approved the 1,700-house subdivision in Lincoln in June, despite largely negative public feedback. Denise Cole is the spokesperson for the group behind the move, Lincoln Voice. She says the land should be protected as it contains rare soil types.
Any of our good soils where we can grow food for the future, we're just gradually eroding that away. We definitely are losing these soils, and something needs to change.
Selwyn District Council has admitted it wasn't planning to rezone the rural land prior to the introduction of new national housing density laws in 2020. And a man and his dog have escaped from a fire that destroyed a house in the Wellington suburb of Tawa this afternoon with just minor smoke inhalation. Porirua Senior Station Officer Simon Johnson, who was on the scene, says the fire was fully involved when crews reached the scene, but he says they were able to restrict the fire to the one dwelling.
It's been difficult to put out, and the ceiling and floor have gone, so we'll be here for another 2 hours just to overhaul and just make sure it doesn't flare up again.
That's the news.
Tonight on Nights, anthropologist Helen Ellis studies the effect of the OE in her latest work and the way that overseas experience shapes us and our culture. Stephanie Lardner, one of 3 women to share their accounts of trying to have a child. And a new book, When Sex Is Not Enough. And then there's Harrison Christian's account of Australia's tragic defence of Rabaul during the Second World War. It's this week's Hump Prize on Nights with me, Brian Crump, after the news at 7 on RNZ National.
And you're back with Lisa Owen next on Checkpoint. Right now, the short forecast from Met Service to midnight Thursday. From Northland to Waikato, also for Coromandel and the Bay of Plenty. Partly cloudy, isolated showers in the far north today. From Waipomo to Kapiti, including Taumaru Nui, Taupo and Taihape, partly cloudy, a few showers. From Gisborne to Wairarapa, also for Wellington, fine, apart from isolated afternoon or evening showers for Hawke's Bay and for the Tararua district today, and a few showers tomorrow in Wellington. Fine today for Nelson and Marlborough, a few showers tomorrow. Bulla and Westland, partly cloudy with isolated showers, becoming fine in Westland tomorrow. Mostly cloudy for Canterbury and Otago with scattered rain or showers, clearing from Otago overnight and from Canterbury tomorrow, snow lowering to around 900 metres. Southland and Fiordland, rain easing this afternoon, mainly fine tomorrow. And for Te Kohu, the Chatham Islands, partly cloudy, a few showers. It's coming up to 8 minutes past 6. Our next news headlines are at 6:30.
Thanks, Evie. No mai, hoki mai. This is Checkpoint. Ko Lisa Owen tēnei. A group of Cantabrians are taking their local council to court after it allowed a development to go ahead on prime farmland. Selwyn District Council approved the 1,700-house Lincoln subdivision in June, despite largely negative public feedback. Resident group Lincoln Voices has lodged an appeal in the Environment Court, saying the exceptional farmland should be protected, not built on. Neva Chittick reports.
Lincoln Voice says the soils chosen for development are rare and should remain zoned for farming. Spokesperson Denise Cole says land closer to the Rolleston township, just 10 kilometres away, would be better.
It has infrastructure for a lot more people, and so that is where all development is meant to be. And there's plenty of land still between Lincoln and Rolleston that is on stony soil, which is much better for building and not as good for agriculture.
Denise Cole says Lincoln residents understand there is a housing shortage in places and they're not against developments.
Clearly there is a need for housing. In the big cities, there is a need for housing. We are a small agricultural town on the edge, very far edge of Christchurch. We don't have a housing crisis.
She adds if the 1,700 houses are built, they won't be affordable. Selwyn District's average house price is the most expensive in Canterbury, at just over $820,000. In a statement from developer Carter Group, Tim Carter says other options were considered.
The Lincoln South area is a natural extension of the existing residential development occurring to the south of the Te Whariki and Whideko subdivisions. The scale of Lincoln South allows a large master-planned development that embraces the natural waterways, cycle connections and a high amenity living environment.
Selwyn District Council has admitted it wasn't planning to rezone the land before the new urban development laws were introduced in 2020. These were supposed to be released alongside legislation for protecting highly productive land, but that's still yet to be announced. Environment Minister David Parker says councils don't need the policy to put protections in place. Minister Parker says under the current system, there is nothing preventing councils from protecting highly productive land, and some have already done this. He says there have been numerous hold-ups with the legislation, including the pandemic, ministerial absences, and an extra round of consultation. The legislation is now expected to be announced by mid to late September. Denise Cole says work on the Environment Court hearing is expected to begin next month.
And that report was from Neva Chittick. The new British Prime Minister Liz Truss has moved into Downing Street after accepting the Queen's invitation to form a government. She's already made some key cabinet appointments. In her first speech as Prime Minister, speaking outside Number 10, Ms Truss says Britain can ride out the storm caused by severe global headwinds. She says she'll transform Britain into an aspiration nation. The BBC's Chris Mason has more.
A day of ritual and weather. A cloudburst puncturing the choreography of the new Prime Minister's arrival, her supporters hunkered under umbrellas, the lectern wearing a bin liner. It was even taken back inside. Her motorcade playing for time with a detour, and then a break in the deluge. The damp stage reset. Within moments, a first glimpse of the new era.
Good afternoon. I have just accepted Her Majesty the Queen's kind invitation to form a new government. Let me pay tribute to my predecessor. Boris Johnson delivered Brexit, the COVID vaccine, and stood up to Russian aggression. History will see him as a hugely consequential Prime Minister. I'm honoured to take on this responsibility at a vital time for our country. We will transform Britain into an aspiration nation with high-paying jobs, safe streets, and where everyone everywhere has the opportunities they deserve. I will take action this day and action every day to make it happen.
Action this day, a phrase borrowed from Winston Churchill. Liz Truss then set out her key objectives.
As Prime Minister, I will pursue 3 early priorities. Firstly, I will get Britain working again. I have a bold plan to grow the economy through tax cuts and reform. I will cut taxes to reward hard work and boost business-led growth and investment.
Next,
I will take action this week to deal with energy bills and to secure our future energy supply. Thirdly, I will make sure that people can get doctor's appointments and the NHS services they need. We will put our health service on a firm footing.
And with a nod to the weather, both economic and meteorological, the Prime Minister sought to describe the country she now leads, how it is, how she wants it to be.
We shouldn't be daunted by the challenges we face. As strong as the storm may be, I know that the British people are stronger. Our country was built by people who get things done. We have huge reserves of talent, of energy and determination. I am confident that together we can ride out the storm. We can rebuild our economy and we can become the modern, brilliant Britain that I know we can be. I am determined to deliver. Thank you.
And that was the new British Prime Minister ending that report. It is almost 6:15. You're with Checkpoint on RNZ National. Fabrication and manipulation, that's how China's ambassador to Australia is describing a UN report accusing Beijing of serious human rights violations in Xinjiang province. Shou Xian says he'd love to see the leaders of Australia and China meet, and he's offering to help a detained Australian journalist contact her family. The ABC's Henry Ballow reports.
For 2 years, Australian journalist Chang Lei has been detained in China, accused of leaking state secrets and prevented from talking to her 2 children.
Personally, I have sympathy to her family, her kids and their relatives.
Now, in a lengthy interview with 730, China's ambassador to Australia, Xiao Chen, has revealed a personal intervention.
On the humanitarian basis, I've been trying to see if I can be helped as ambassador to facilitate a possible much easier access, either between her and her relatives or her the Australian embassies.
But Xiao Chen bristled when asked about a United Nations report detailing torture and possible crimes against humanity from China's mass detention of Uyghurs in Xinjiang province.
That's absolutely fabrication. Over 10,000 miles away from the truth. There's nothing true in it.
The Foreign Minister Penny Wong has described the report as harrowing reading and says Australia will consult with other countries on how to respond, prompting this mild rebuke from the ambassador.
Australia is entitled to their own views, but I'm going to suggest that Australia should check against the facts before make a serious statement.
China specialist Richard McGregor, a senior fellow at the Lowy Institute, says the ambassador's remarks were restrained given Australia's response to the UN report remains unclear.
We are clearly, as Penny Wong indicated, going to do it in concert with like-minded countries like the US, the UK, Canada, possibly New Zealand, possibly Japan as well. In other words, we're not going to go out on our own.
Xiao Chen also flagged a possible meeting between China's President Xi Jinping and Prime Minister Anthony Albanese if there was a favourable atmosphere, but denied Beijing putting any preconditions on it.
Well, I think for the top leaders of two countries to meet, we have to make sure that it's going to be a constructive one instead of a destructive one. I'd love to see a top-level meeting between two countries.
Richard McGregor says it's impossible to say whether a meeting between the two leaders will take place, but points out there are plenty of opportunities.
In Asia, we have the East Asia Summit, we have APEC, there's going to be a G20 meeting in Bali. So Mr Albanese is going to be in the same room as either Xi Jinping or the outgoing Premier Li Keqiang, so they could meet.
And he adds that while the ambassador's interview with 7:30 last night shows China is trying to stabilise the diplomatic relationship with Australia, it also exposed, once again, some of those tensions.
It both illustrates that China is willing to engage compared to a year ago, but it also highlights the deep differences between the two countries. So you can look at it any way you want, in fact.
And that report from the ABC. The UN nuclear watchdog is calling for a security zone around the Zaporizhzhia nuclear power plant in Ukraine, saying there is urgent need for measures to prevent an accident. The IAEA issued a report today after its visit to the Russian-occupied complex, saying it's gravely concerned. It says inspectors witnessed damage from shelling attacks and that fighting is a constant threat to nuclear safety. Meanwhile, Ukraine's military says it has repelled several Russian offences in the eastern Donetsk region. It also is reporting new progress in the counter-offensive on the southern front. CNN's Sam Kiley is in Odessa.
Margot, go, go, go! No panic, no panic! This normal.
Among the most forward troops in Ukraine's latest counter-offensive, this really is normal. When the crunch of incoming artillery is this intense,
guys,
casualties in this reconnaissance unit, which includes 3 foreigners, are inevitable. Mark Ayres of Britain was lightly wounded on day 1 of the offensive. On day 2, he was more seriously injured in the leg by artillery alongside Michael Zaffer, a former US Marine from Kansas. He was hit in the hand, stomach and head. They joined Ukraine's army together, but met fighting ISIS in Syria. Zafar is the former US Marine's Kurdish code name.
I am fine, go.
As Recce troops, they've been the tip of Ukraine's attacks on its southern front in the fight to recapture Kherson.
And then I just remember looking up to my left and then pop, and couldn't see anything for a bit. Everything looked the same, everything came to. Looked at my left, looked fine, looked at my right, okay, I'm there, all right, to the hole.
It's going to be a slow, grinding fight, they say, whatever the claims of Ukraine's government.
This counter-offensive is being billed as kind of a quick process. Do you think that that's...
No, definitely not. That won't be quick. I mean, it's hard, slow fought, metre by metre, position by position, because we haven't got the resources to do a massive blitzkrieg.
US weapons and other NATO equipment have proved useful, but not decisive, as Ukraine has captured a handful of villages since the counter-offensive began. Here, Russian troops wave a white flag of surrender. Precision artillery strikes by US-supplied howitzers are monitored by Zafar's Recce unit with a drone. Russia's motivated its troops with false claims that they're liberating Ukraine from Nazis. For Ukraine, it's a battle of national survival, attracting help from around the world.
Do you feel sorry for the Russians?
No, not at all. It's not like Ukraine has invaded Russia. They've invaded Ukraine. They're here, killing civilians, killing our soldiers. I've got no sympathy for them whatsoever.
Ukraine's imposed a news blackout on the southern offensive and keeps its casualty figures secret. But for these men, being wounded isn't the end of combat. It's an interruption.
And are you going to go back?
Yeah, once everything heals on my body, probably within 3 to 4 weeks, I should be right back out there.
Today is the day many Wall Street firms want their employees back in the office full-time. But that's not what some workers want. The pandemic has changed the way many Americans work, live and balance health and family issues. CNN's Vanessa Yukovic has more on the office showdown.
A 5-day work week is nothing new, but post-pandemic, 5 days in the office can feel overwhelming. Post-Labor Day, some companies are now requiring employees to hang up their house slippers and get back into the office for good.
What would your immediate reaction be to that?
Like, oh no.
It's a feeling many Americans may be having. About 56% of full-time U.S. employees, more than 70 million workers, say they can do their job from home. But companies like Goldman Sachs, Tesla, Bank of America, and Morgan Stanley are requiring employees to return to the office full-time.
They're feeling very confident about, it's back to school, it's back to the office, it's back to reality.
About 6.5% of employees in the U.S. were teleworking last month, fewer than in July, a sign that some workers could be getting called back in.
Hey, we did a good job.
For attorney Jessica Carroll, the prospect of going into the office full-time again would be a challenge.
You've kind of gotten used to this hybrid work from home experience. It would be hard to just go from what it is now to 5 days. It's kind of like ripping off the Band-Aid.
Like most, Carol was in the office every day in early 2020.
It was pretty demanding.
Then COVID hit. She had a newborn and changed jobs. A hybrid schedule was important, where she could be on a conference call and still pick up her older kids after school. The mother of 3 says so far, her new firm has been flexible.
Having people in the office and more available by person rather than by phone is something that they encourage, but there's no strict policy.
After over 2 years working from home, some companies have fully embraced it. This summer, Yelp announced it would close offices in 3 major cities after just 1% of employees voluntarily returned in person. But some jobs can't be done remotely.
There are moments in our work where it's really important to be in person.
Bottom Line is a not-for-profit organization that helps lower-income high school students get into college. 80% of its 140 employees have in-person jobs and started their return to office this summer.
Did you face any resistance from staff?
I think there was trepidation across the board.
Did you lose anybody along the way?
I'm sure we lost a few who, for them, the decision to be back in the office wasn't the right decision.
With over 11 million unfilled jobs, that's about 2 open positions for every job seeker. A return to office mandate could be a deal breaker. Bottom Line has 15 in-person roles to fill.
We haven't been immune to the Great Resignation. We've seen, higher turnover in the last couple of years. It absolutely is a concern.
The Cuban crocodile is said to be one of the rarest in the world, and the race is on to save them. There are only around 4,000 crocodiles living in the wild, with illegal hunting and climate change threatening their long-term survival. The BBC's Tim Allmond reports.
In the battle to save the crocodiles of Cuba, every little victory counts. This baby croc had been taken by poachers, but is now being returned to its natural habitat.
Releasing crocodiles is really impressive because we return the animal to a free life in the wild. They face several challenges: illegal hunting and the results of climate change.
These are fierce little creatures, but they don't stay little for long. They usually grow to around 2 metres in length, but some can get a lot bigger than that. The fundamental problem is they are native to only 2 very specific locations in Cuba, and they don't travel very far. So any threat to their habitat is a threat to them. Researchers try to study them in the wild, but sometimes they have to take more drastic action.
Between May and June, Cuban crocodiles make their nests, and when that happens, we collect the eggs. It's the most dangerous time, and we must be most careful because the Cuban crocodile takes great care of his nests with great passion, and they attack us.
The long-term ambition is a thriving community of Cuban crocodiles in the wild. But for now, some of them have to be studied in captivity. The threat is real, the desire to protect them even more so.
In China, it's believed more than 68 million people now own cats or dogs. And when pets go missing, it's a heartbreak for their owners. But now for residents in Shanghai, there's help at hand. A pet detective, not too far away and ready to track them down. The BBC's Michael Bristow has more.
This is Sun Jin Rong, pet detective. He's on the hunt for a runaway cat that goes by the name of Dee Dee. The treasured pet was last seen at 3:44 p.m. There's no time to lose. Dee Dee's family, who live in Shanghai, is moving home tomorrow. He has to be found today. Mr. Sun started out by helping stray dogs. He's adopted some of them.
A lot of the time I'm disappointed in human beings. It feels nicer to be with animals. They have brighter eyes.
Back on the hunt for Dee, Mr. Sun and his team try to guess where the prized feline might have run off to. Suddenly there's a breakthrough. A cat has been spotted under some decking. Mr. Sun takes a picture of the frightened animal. Is it Dee? That's him, confirms a visibly relieved owner.
You feel settled?
I feel much happier as a mother.
But the drama isn't over. Mr. Sun and his assistant spend 3 hours trying to extract Dee, who doesn't seem completely overjoyed to be caught. There are no such reservations at home. Dee's owner lovingly scolds the runaway cat. Where have you been? You smell so bad. Thank you, she tells Mr. Sun, another satisfied client for the Shanghai pet detective.
Oh, what fun being a pet detective. Now, just a reminder of a warning issued by police this evening. It's in relation to a string of serious incidents related to MDMA. They're issuing a warning to communities after the tragic death of a Canterbury man over the weekend and 2 other serious incidents in Queenstown. The police say they're continuing to investigate the sudden death of a 20-year-old who died in Christchurch in the early hours of Sunday morning. There are early indications that his death may relate to a potential drug overdose. 2 people have been arrested and charged, a male and female, both aged 33, and the charge there is possession for supply of a Class B drug, but they're not ruling out the possibility of more serious charges. They say also that there was incidents in Queenstown where police are aware of security guards over the weekend assisting 2 people who'd had seizures after reportedly taking MDMA. So they strongly recommend that people take extreme care, as what they think they may be taking may in fact be a completely different drug or substance. They're issuing the warning because there is a music festival starting in Queenstown from tomorrow until Sunday, and they don't want to see anyone else becoming sick or worse. So take care. That is pretty much all we've got time for. Now, the Late News team's going to keep you updated throughout the night. Remember, if you missed anything from the program, you can check out Checkpoint on Spotify, Apple or wherever you get your podcasts from. Ko te kaupapa tuatahi a pōpō, and tomorrow from 5 a.m, First Up speaks to Deputy Prime Minister Grant Robertson and asks whether the government will apologise to the women wrongly accused of breaking COVID rules and plunging Northland into a lockdown. Kaua e wariwari te atatero I a mātou kōrero. Heaps of great videos. Check them out online.
RNZ News headlines at 6:30. Good evening, kia ora tātou. Ko Evie Ashton temnei. Northland businesses are calling for an independent investigation over last year's lockdown blunder in Northland. The country may be moving into a new stage of the COVID pandemic, with the virus at its lowest level since February. However, the Deputy Director General of Health important. And former Speaker Trevor Mallard's move to trespass Winston Peters from Parliament has cost the taxpayer more than $23,000 in legal fees so far. Those are the headlines. Our next news and weather is at 6:30.
Hello listener, it's Nathan here, host of First Up, which is RNZ's show that's on in the wee hours of the morning. Now, people who wake up at 5 a.m. say things like, "Oh, it's the best part of the day," which is a lie. I mean, it's early and sleep is important. But now, through the wonders of podcast technology, you can experience First Up at any time, day or night. You could listen to the First Up podcast on your commute, trip to the supermarket, or even in a darkened room to give it that authentic 5 a.m. feel. A full episode of First Up will be waiting for you wherever you find podcasts, the good ones. So subscribe now to the First Up podcast.
Kia ora, Nathan. Actually, you know what? It won't be long before it won't be that dark at 5 a.m, especially if you live